Welcome back to the channel. This is a tutorial of a skeleton greeter sitting on a tombstone. And look at the poor skeleton, hunched over, stuck to this chair. It didn't work during Halloween, but I promised him to really make it much better for him. He's going to be so proud sitting on top of his tombstone. Lucky for him, though, I did introduce myself recently to welding. Don't worry, this is not a tutorial about how to weld, but rather I will show you a little bit later on the frame that I created in order to hold them up and hold up the tombstone. For now, let's just discuss about the tombstone itself. So it's an 8-foot piece of styrofoam that I cut in half and I bought at my local hardware store for about $20. But I double it up by sticking two pieces together. So it's one board that I cut in half because anyways, it wouldn't fit my small car. So when you go buy it at the hardware store, you bring a little utility knife. And then you just put a little bit of great stuff, insulating foam in between, and then you put weight on it, or if you have clamps, that's even better. It really sticks them extremely well together. And then I'll worry about filling the gap in the middle, but this is super, super solid. And then what you do is you use this, and that's what I'm going to be doing now, to cut a little bit of detail. And you see how easy it does it? And you do it randomly like that to give it that old look. And I'll continue it on this side. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be good enough for me. And again, the good thing about this foam, because it's so light, because it's so porous, it's super easy to cut. And then I'm going to be putting some lines across. That's when you need this tool, because when it gets hot, you're able to make some cracks. You get your motivation either from inspiration or desperation. I had mine from desperation, from building PVC frames or wood frames that would be unreliable and that would actually break down during showtime. The last Halloween hunt, I had 3 of my props that did not work. The motors did not work properly. So I took up welding. And as you can see, I'm still very much a beginner. And I bought the equipment, the metal plates, the bearing that you see. Everything is available either at Amazon or at your hardware store. And you just have to be careful, very safe, but it's relatively easy to do and it gives you peace of mind. This is my welding equipment. So it's the Vivor 145. It's a couple of letters, 145, I don't remember, plus the helmet, plus the gloves, and the accessories, including the table, for roughly about $400 Canadian. Really, really affordable. It provides you a new skill, and that machine doesn't require any modification to your electrical supplies because it plugs into 120 volt, 15 amp plug. So it's wonderful. And it can weld pieces of metal up to 10 millimeters thick. So make sure you follow the YouTube tutorial because I'm not going to do any tutorials of welding on my channel because I'm still very much a beginner. So I bought this bearing, which is really useful, at Amazon, and this long thread that will go up the spine of my skeleton. And it will be attached to a wiper motor, and that wiper motor turns about 90 degrees. And this is the skeleton that I took apart from the chair. And as you can see, it'll go up its spine and it will attach and it will turn from side to side as you saw at the beginning of the video. I covered the seams of the two pieces of styrofoam, once again with the great stuff. And I dabbed it in with my hands using obviously vinyl gloves. And now it's time for the heat gun to give it that weathered look, that old, decrepit stone look, and you'll see that it really works well. And that's really needed because even though if you paint over it directly without using the heat gun, you'll see the texture of the cheap styrofoam. So that cheap styrofoam actually enables you to really do a good job with the heat gun once you finish it. Make sure you use it in a very well ventilated area under adult supervision. And then when you continue the heat gun along the side to really smooth out the edges that you cut with your foam cutter. So that's not even painted. It looks pretty good. The wording I chose was Bienvenue en enfer, which means welcome to hell. I just did this in a Word document, printed it to the size of the letters that I wanted, and I temporarily stuck the paper on a tombstone, centered it properly, and now I'm cutting the letters meticulously and patiently with a cutting knife. The following next step was carving the letters with my Dremel tool. And yes, make sure that you have a vacuum cleaner right next to it because the particles will definitely fly everywhere. And at the same time, I strongly recommend you do not wear a wool type sweater like I had because it got stuck all over the place. And I made a mistake with my Dremel. As you can see, there's an extra E there. Instead of an F, it was an E. So en ear instead of enfer. So working with foam, great stuff. I'm just able to cover my mistake. There's always a way. And that's why it's fun to work randomly and make sure that you always wear gloves when manipulating spray foam because it will get stuck to your fingers for days to come if you don't use vinyl gloves or latex gloves. With the insulating foam, I am now creating randomly the vine that will be on top of the tombstone and making it a little bit thicker at the base because that's going to be the start of the roots of the vine. While the foam is still wet and actually growing, drying up, take advantage of putting in little leaves or decorations. I used old vine leaves that I had, leftover vine leaves, and it really worked out well. And I painted around it later because I really did not want to stick it with hot glue. I wanted it to be permanently attached to the foam while the foam is drying up. You'll need a few cans, maybe a couple cans of flat black paint to cover the entire tombstone. And when it comes to painting, you always want to start with the darkest color. So I'm covering the whole thing in black color, and then I will go over it with a matte gray paint. So now it's like a brownish. It looks shiny, but it's gonna fade out and it's gonna be matte. And I'll do some shading with dry brush with black, not too much. Oops, there's more here on the side. So I'm planning to have more fun with my Tombstone. You can see here the before and after pictures of painting it. It looks pretty good, but more work needs to be done to lighten up the vine itself, maybe put lighter brownish colors to really make it stand out. Because don't forget that your Tombstone will be shown outside in the dark most of the time, especially during the show date. So don't hesitate to lighten up the colors. And I did the letters with a basic red acrylic paint, but I'm gonna have more fun with it. Probably put some glow-in-the-dark paint and facing it with a black light. That could probably be fun to do. So that's the main thing, right? We're doing this in order to have fun and to motivate ourselves to be even more creative. Let's go back to the skeleton now. This is a very basic Walmart skeleton that is corpse with saran wrap that is shrunk with the heat gun that you saw earlier. I painted it brown, black, and I added the great stuff insulating foam that I like because it doesn't swell up too much to provide some flesh to it. And the bright red is really a deliberate choice to emphasize the quote-unquote gore, since it will be displayed in darkness. The big bearing that you see on top there was overkill. I bought that size by mistake, but I decided to keep it. This is why there's a nut inside to be able to hold the thread. That long 3/4 inch thread and the nuts were bought at my local hardware store, and I painted the frame with Tremclad in order to minimize the rust. Sometimes I decided to not weld, but rather use bolts and nuts, and that one on the side is just to make the prop even. But one thing's for sure is I did decide to weld the thread to the nut at the bottom and decided to weld the nut to the wiper motor. That was the only way for me to secure it, and this is the main reason why I bought a welding kit, is I was fed up of my wiper motors to always free up from the movement. So this is all welded together. It's permanent, and that's fine. It gives me peace of mind. And in between the hip and the spine, you see that there's another nut, and there's another nut right there at the top of the spine. And this is to be able to adjust the skeleton on how far it moves from left and how far it moves to the right. Like now I make it that way to direct people to his left because it's going to direct people to the haunt that is set up in my garage, where people come in one door and out the other. And I will probably display it with an old prop I made a couple of years ago. Essentially, it's a couple of light sets covered with insulating foam, painted black and gray. I think they go well together. And the lantern, by the way, is a regular lantern that I bought at Amazon, and inside it's a battery-operated LED flame light that you again buy at Amazon for your garden. So I took it apart and I just kept the bulb and I put it in that little lantern. As you can see, everything is welded together. The nut is welded to the screw that is provided with the wiper motor, and the screw is welded to the shaft of the wiper motor to make it solid. Now, finally, let me just discuss about the controller. So I put that in a plastic box, and you have a 5 amp power supply, 5 amp 12 volt power supply that supplies power to this little controller that is a controller you can buy off Amazon. I really don't like those controllers because my experience has been like 1 out of 2 just burns out and it's not very solid. And so that's why I've decided to get a new type of controller that I use for my pumpkin monster. And by the way, my tutorial on how to make this wonderful monster is available on my channel. But to make it work, because it's a big head, I need a 10 amp power supply. And I use this wonderful picovolt controller from Fright Props. It is super reliable and it works flawlessly. And you can even program some movements from left to right if you want to make it jerky or whatever. It can program up to 2 minutes of movement. So I think that's wonderful also. It's very small. It is much more expensive than the Amazon controller I showed you before, but you could get all the details at frightprops.com. I hope you liked the video and that it inspired you to do a similar project. Don't hesitate to ask any questions in the comments below, and check out the channel for the Pumpkin Monster tutorial and many other ones that I have there. I also invite you to subscribe, since I will be posting other videos regularly until Halloween. It's never too early to have fun and let your creativity take over for Halloween. All the best. Thank you for watching.